Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I am your co-host Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today Ryan and we will be evaluating all the teams in the AFC North and what each team has to do to be successful in 2023. But before we get into that, Ryan and we just want to have a huge shout out to all of our new subscribers that have joined. Ryan and we have over 100 subscribers within the past month. It has been great content. Ryan and we keep putting out what we think is great content. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment on what you think each of the AFC North teams have to do. So, Ryan, that being said, let's get into it. The Cleveland Browns, I'll just start out. What a weird year for Cleveland fans. Just everything going on with Deshaun Watson, and then he comes over. We don't know what the suspension is going to be, and then he has, and correct me if I'm wrong, but arguably one of the best player contracts given ever, if not the best given ever.
Yeah, I want to say he is the most guaranteed money ever by like $40 million.
Yeah,
I think not a small margin.
5 years, $230 million. Browns gave up a lot for him, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see how they go into this offseason because they are now, just as of February 18th, at negative $14.3 million in the cap space. And so they are going to need to make some cuts. But I think that there are some key people that they need to sign to keep on, one of which, to me, one of the best things about this team is their ability to run the ball, which then opens up things in the passing game. So having a stout offensive line, I think, is what they need to re-sign. And Ethan Postition was the third best center, according to PFF statistically. So I think they need to keep him and solidify that offensive line because Nick Chubb, I think, is coming on a contract year, and also Nick Chubb's one of the best running backs in the league. He had 1,500 yards last year. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how they manage their money because they're giving a lot to their QB.
Yeah, no, I mean, they rushed the ball. They were the sixth best rushing team in the NFL last year. And for the large majority of the season, that was the only thing that they could really do, what was run the ball. And they're not exactly in the best division for running the football, as the Bengals had the seventh best rushing defense. The Steelers had the ninth, and the Ravens had the third best run D. All top 10 run defenses. So for them to be able to be the sixth best rushing offense was really impressive, and I think they need to build around that, especially because I think right now they're really lacking like a second weapon around Amari Cooper. And with Deshaun Watson coming back and getting 6 games to really kind of knock the rust off, you could start to see at the end of the season in the last few games that him and Amari Cooper started to have a connection. And so I think things are looking up for the Cleveland Browns. They just are in a really tough division. And especially with the Bengals offseason that they could potentially have with 7 draft picks and almost $45 million in cap space. I think the Browns could get outpaced in this offseason. However, with Deshaun Watson being this huge X factor, I think that kind of allows them a little bit more benefit of the doubt than in other situations that we see across the league. So,
well, because he's definitely a guy, doesn't matter what your opinions are on him or the situation. He is still an electrifying quarterback. And when you don't play football for 2 years, you're not going to see it. But I'm very curious on how he bounces back because definitely had tough time, especially at first. I mean, stats through 6 games, only 1,100 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. But I agree with you, though, on that, is that they need to get a second weapon on the outside because Amari Cooper is still an elite weapon, over 1,000 yards receiving last year. And that where their second pick is at in the draft, they're picking 43rd overall. It's their first overall pick. There's going to be a decent bit of those senior day receivers that we saw play really well. That they could, I think he's going to be a great fit on the other side as well.
Yeah.
They did draft David Bell. Also, he's more of a slot guy last year who kind of was steady. He ended up having just like a couple catches, I think, for 214 yards, but maybe they can build around him. But I think offensively, I agree. It's going to be maintaining that rushing dominance and then getting in a second weapon, definitely good receiver B to
Yeah.
kind of go along with Amari Cooper. Let's switch over to the defense, because it's still amazing to me how amazing, I would say, it's amazing how amazing Myles Garrett is. Myles Garrett
Yeah.
is a freaking stud.
Oh, yeah. And he was doing what he did this year after a really bad car accident that should have held him out for 6 weeks. And he played not the week of the crash, but I think the next weekend.
Oh yeah, I don't think he played against the Falcons. I think that was the one game that he didn't play.
And I want to say he played against the Patriots in week like 4 or
That's insane.
5. No, it was week 6 actually. However, the rest of this defense, they are losing Deion Jones, Jadeveon Clowney, Taven Bryant is kind of a bigger deal, and I think they need to add some corner depth around or beside Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward had a down year for him, but he's still a true number 1 corner in the NFL. Yeah. And to me, where they really struggled on defense was rushing. And I think part of that, they had a lot of money tied up in Jadeveon Clowney. That experiment didn't really work. And Denzel Ward and John Johnson III did make it difficult for teams to pass. So they were kind of forced to throw the ball. Also, I know they gave up a few big rushing performances, like in week 6 against the Patriots, ran for over 225 yards on them. And that was just, they have a couple outlier games that also inflate their numbers as well. So solidifying that defensive interior, definitely going to be a couple guys in the draft that at that 40, you said 43rd?
Yeah, 43rd pick.
Yeah, 43rd pick. And like Siaki Ika from Baylor, Maisie Smith from Michigan. Those are a couple big space-eating defensive tackles that might be around at that point. If not, this is a pretty solid defensive interior class going all the way down to Keanu Benton, who's expected to go late round 2, early round 3 at the defensive tackle position. So I like them being able to fill in those positions. I do kind of want to move into their draft and offseason. You mentioned their cap. They're about $14.5 million over the cap already. So possibly restructuring. There might be a couple cap casualties from the roster. However, I think they should be able to be about even come draft time. And they have 8 picks, no first round pick, but a 2, 3, then 2 4s, 2 5s, and a 6 and a 7. And in this draft, I really like having that solid, like middle round pick there. They'll have good flexibility to move up and down and really be able to target players that benefit them. Another, I think, sneaky need that they have, Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson are both unrestricted free agents. And with the cap space, I doubt they're really going to want to spend any money at that position. And so,
and that's one thing you were talking about on how deep this class is. Running backs, I mean, they can go get a 4th, 5th round running back. And shoot, add Tajay Spears from Tulane along with Nick Chubb right there. I mean, I think that would be a great combo. Have all 3 of those guys in the backfield. Well, with Deshaun Watson, all 3 of those guys in the backfield could be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and so I think that they'll be able to acquire good depth. They're not going to get a blue chip prospect. One guy that I'm curious with the situations that are going on with him off the field, Kayshon Boutte, from the wide receiver from LSU, 6 foot, 210, was the top high school wide receiver coming out in 2019, ahead of Rakeem Jarrett from Maryland, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and a few other guys. He's coming up. He would be a first round pick if he wasn't having some off the field issues. And that could be a guy that could slip into the 2nd, maybe even the 3rd round that they could pick up as well to be a weapon. He's also a Deebo Samuel type guy that you can line him up in a lot of different situations. So I think the Browns have a pretty good outlook going into 2023. I do see them possibly getting a little outpaced this year. by some of their division rivals, specifically the Bengals, but I think they're going to do that with the rest of the division. But yeah, so I like the situation that the Browns are in, and they should be competitive for the division in 2023.
Yeah. So. Well, they always seem to compete. That division, the AFC North division, it always seems to just compete. They all play similar styles of football, very like kind of run. Actually, the Bengals are the only one that I would say is West Coast esque offense.
And even then, they still run a lot of play action and give Joe Mixon the ball, not necessarily effectively, but enough.
I think that's why those games are so fun because, man, they just don't like each other at all. But it's going to be very interesting to watch what the Browns do in the offseason. A lot of needs to address, and I'm not an accountant. I don't know how you get that number lower, but they're going to have to figure out a way somehow. They're going to have to figure out how to do it somehow. But I think that's going to wrap it up with the Cleveland Browns.